Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into the story of Esther. And wow, what a story. She's this, unlikely hero, and her journey really makes you ask a pretty timeless question. How does someone who is completely, totally sold out to the culture, how do they find the courage to actually change the world?
Okay, so our story kicks off in the ancient Persian Empire. And let me tell you, it was a world built entirely on surfaces. Just look at this quote: "A man's worth the size of his wallet. A woman's worth the size of her dress." I mean, it's pretty blunt, right? In this world, what you have was everything. It mattered so much more than who you actually were.
And that brings us to the first part of our explainer. This superficial world, it really forces this powerful question on you. If you play the game, if you sell out to the culture just to get by, to survive, can you ever really find true courage? That's it. That's the central tension of Esther's entire story.
So get this, the king throws a party that lasts for 180 days. I mean, half a year. And why? Just to show off how rich he was. And then, when he needs a new queen, what does he do? The analysis we're digging into calls it a kind of Persian idol. An empire-wide beauty pageant. It's just wild. This was a world built completely, 100% on image.
So into this crazy world step two very different queens. First, you've got Vashti. She actually stands up to the king when he demands she be put on display for a bunch of drunken guys. And what does she get for her bravery? She's banished. Gone. Then comes Esther. And she takes the exact opposite approach. Total compliance. She's not fighting the system. She's going to play the game to win it.
And the depth of her compromise, it's just staggering. I mean, to lock in her position, she hides her Jewish identity. She breaks sacred dietary laws. She sleeps with a pagan king before marrying him. Seriously, by almost any standard you can think of, from ancient rabbis to modern feminists, her actions look like a complete, total sellout. There's really no other way to put it.
And this is where the story, brings it right to our doorstep with this really provocative question. Are you a concubine to the culture? I mean, are we driven more by what we have, the status, the image, the power, than by the actual substance of who we are? It's a pretty uncomfortable question, for sure, but it's right at the heart of Esther's whole journey. All right, let's move on. So Esther has played the world's game, and she's won the ultimate prize. She's queen. But a crisis is coming, and it's going to force her to confront the absolute limits of that power and finally decide what it was all even for.
So here's the crisis. The king's top advisor, a guy named Haman, he manipulates the king into signing a genocidal decree. And it's specific. On a single, set day, all Jews in the entire empire are to be annihilated. Just like that. And suddenly, our queen, the one who got her crown through strategic silence, is staring down a life-or-death choice.
This is when her cousin, Mordecai, delivers this absolutely famous challenge, and it basically reframes her entire life. He makes it devastatingly clear, hey, your position in the palace, that's not a shelter to hide in, it's a platform you have to use. All that power she spent so much time acquiring, it wasn't for her own safety. It was for such a time as this.
And right here, with this single decision, her transformation is complete. It's incredible. The compliant woman who just played by the rules, she finds her voice. She decides to risk everything, her crown, her safety, her life. She's going to approach the king uninvited, which, by the way, was a crime punishable by death.
Okay, so Esther's decision, it kicks off this great reversal of fortunes. But to really get what's happening, we need to zoom in on two opposing forces that are really at the heart of this story: pride and humility.
Now, the analysis we're exploring here, which draws from C.S. Lewis, has a really interesting definition of pride. It's not just arrogance. It's this ruthless, sleepless, unsmiling concentration on yourself. That constant nagging inner voice, the one asking, how do I look? How am I being seen? Are people giving me the respect I deserve? That's pride. It can't just enjoy something for what it is. It only finds pleasure in having more of it than the next guy. So what's the alternative to that? Well, it's humility. And this is such a great distinction. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. See the difference? That's the key. It isn't self-hatred. It's self-forgetfulness. It's this amazing freedom from that needy ego, and that freedom is what allows you to finally get interested in something bigger than yourself. And you see these two forces just perfectly embodied in Haman and Mordecai. Haman's entire identity is built on his job title and what other people think of him, which of course makes it incredibly fragile, right? But Mordecai, he refuses to bow down to Haman. His identity is rooted in something so much deeper, and that's what sets the whole stage for this great reversal.
So how does this great reversal actually happen? Well, it's not with a big thunderclap from this guy. It happens through this string of what just look like boring, mundane coincidences. I mean, check this out. The king can't sleep one night, he gets bored, so he has a clerk read him old court records. The clerk just happens to read about how Mordecai saved the king's life and was never rewarded. Then, the next morning, who shows up? Haman, and he's there to ask for Mordecai's execution, but he arrives at the worst possible moment. All these tiny, seemingly random events just weave together perfectly to bring about the villain's downfall. Our analysis calls this silent sovereignty. Kind of cool, right?
And this whole chain of events, it leads us right to the climax of the story. And this is where the whole idea of what it means to win, to find rest from our enemies, gets completely redefined.
So picture this. Esther throws a second, carefully planned banquet, and it's here that she finally does it. She reveals her identity and exposes Haman's entire plot. The king is of course enraged, and he orders Haman to be executed on the very gallows that Haman had just built for Mordecai. I mean, you can't get more poetic or more just than that.
But the story's real takeaway here is something way deeper than just poetic justice. It draws this really crucial distinction. See, there's one kind of peace or rest that you get from destroying your enemy. It's temporary. But there's a much deeper, more lasting peace that you get from destroying the enmity itself. You know, the actual hostility that's fueling the whole conflict in the first place.
So what does that even look like, destroying enmity instead of the enemy? Well, our analysis points to this really powerful example from a totally different story, Les Miserables. Think about it. When Jean Valjean steals from the bishop doesn't respond with justice. He responds with this shocking, unbelievable grace. And he actually calls it a formidable attack on Valjean's bitter heart. That grace is what shatters the whole cycle of hate and transforms him forever.
And that brings us to the final and maybe most challenging takeaway. The story of Esther, when you get to its deepest level, it's pointing us toward this radical reimagining of what victory even is. It's suggesting that the ultimate way to destroy an enemy isn't with force, but with a kind of grace that completely transforms them. So it leaves us all with this question, right? What if the best way to destroy an enemy is to make them a friend? Just think about that. What would our world look like if we actually fought our battles that way?